This is Karen with NewClevelandRadio.net, and it is time for Heart Mojo with Melinda Smith. And Melinda, it's been a couple weeks,
Hmm.
and I see that it looks like you're more settled in your home office now.
I'm getting there. There's still a lot to do. Life has been very complicated, as you know, for the last few weeks. So I'm doing what I can every day. That's what all we can do.
Well, that's something that um, we know, but a lot of our listeners don't really understand it. And it's not easy for all of us. And I've been very lucky because I met Reverend Rachel Hollander through her sister Anita Hollander. And you both have challenges, different
Hmm.
challenges. Um, and yet, I have to tell you, I am so inspired by the two of you. And I know you have another sister. Um, oh, two more sisters. Okay.
Florence, yeah.
So, but you and Anita, who I know, I am so inspired by that. I knew that you would be a great guest with Melinda today um, because we talk about being on a journey. And
We are
you
definitely on a journey and working through the challenges every day, right? So
absolutely.
that's kind of how I got started doing this. I was on social media and Karen found me. I don't even know how we connected. And then she kept saying, do this podcast. You do this podcast. Because I would put out videos about getting through my cancer journey, which is how
Mm.
I started. And here we are today talking about all sorts of different challenges. And you, thankfully, I don't think you have a cancer challenge in your past, just other challenges that people who tune in may want to hear a little bit about. And whatever we can do, if we can help one person, that's the goal. That's the whole goal of this podcast. If it helps one person get through their day, that's important to me. So,
Yes.
Absolutely.
welcome, Rachel. It's such a pleasure to meet you.
It's a pleasure to meet you. I love what you just said because I'm really inspired by the starfish story
Hmm.
about the little boy on the beach and that whole idea of, I can help this one, I can help this one, and one at a time, we can help folks. That's
Right.
all that matters.
Absolutely.
So, could you share with us a little bit about you and what your challenges are and kind of how you became Reverend Rachel Hollander?
Oh my goodness, those are a lot of stories, but I
Well,
will.
let's start with one and we'll move forward.
um, so I was born in a small shack. No, I was born into a wonderful, loving family in Cleveland, Ohio, and I was born with uh, depression, and it was not anything that anyone detected. It was something that I knew was happening within me. I just didn't know what it was,
Hmm.
and so I tended to keep it very quiet. And so even though as a teenager I was extremely over the top, outgoing, voted goofiest girl, loud, boisterous, and all of that, that was all out there. And it was in order to keep
It was
the
your cover.
secret, yeah, to keep the secret part of me, the part of me that was really struggling and trying to keep my head above the water, and to stay alive. And so yeah, so this past year I published this book, and I was just talking about this with a friend of mine today. She and I have known each other for, there's my book, yay.
There's the book. Karen's got it.
Love it.
Mine will
Um,
be on the way.
yes. I was talking to a friend we've known each other for like 47 years, and she said, writing that book was the bravest thing you've ever done because you never told anybody any of this stuff. And it's true. A lot of things were kept very private.
When did you know that you had depression? Like, how old were you when you said, hey, something's not right?
I always felt it, the oh, and my words are gone. The first validation of it was I had a diary from when I was 10, 11, when I was 11 years old. And I had written in there, I'm so depressed. And
Hmm.
looking back on that, I thought, how did I even, like, I don't even remember knowing that I knew that word. I just knew there was something different about me, and it wasn't a good different. I felt very separate from the world. And I I always tried to get into the world. I just always felt I felt like the world was happening without me. And I just felt really sad.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I was 12, my father died suddenly. And I talk about that as being like, that was the hook. Like, oh, now I can hang these feelings on something. See, my father died, so I'm sad, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And it all made sense then. Whereas before I didn't like, I was like, why do I feel this way? Everything's fine. You know, I wasn't living in poverty. I had shoes. I went to the dentist. I went to school. I had friends. There was just something not right. And so yeah, so when my dad died, it was like, and we'll hang everything on that hook. And yet that wasn't even it either. That was just uh, traumatizing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the journey to becoming Reverend Rachel started also very young, where I was born and raised Jewish. However, I always felt like, you know, there's so much more out there. God is so big. God is so big. And as soon as I was able to, I started visiting other houses of worship
Mm-hmm.
and researching. And then in 2007, I started at a seminary in New York City, an interfaith seminary, and became ordained as an interfaith minister. Before that, I'd become a spiritual counselor. So I'd been doing spiritual counseling for a while, and then found the seminary, and then I became Reverend Rachel. And it was,
That's awesome. I
yeah,
can tell you I have a very interesting, eclectic religious upbringing. Brought
awesome.
up Zion Lutheran, very close to Catholicism.
Oh,
Went to a Quaker church as a teenager, and then found Unity,
yeah,
which I actually really like because that's a metaphysical church.
yeah.
And then when I got married, I was Jewish. So, and I
So,
do really appreciate the family oriented group that it is and the traditions. That's how I raised my children. And I love the rabbi at the place I was going in Cleveland, Rabbi Scoff. I don't know if you know who he is at Park,
oh, yeah,
but he's amazing. He is truly amazing. He makes Judaism user friendly. That's what I always said.
that's fantastic.
But I feel like there are many paths to God. It doesn't matter how you get there, just that you're a good person and you take a righteous road, a good road, and you're good to people and kind to people. And that's really what's important. I don't really care who you are, where you came from as far as a religious background. It's just, are you a good person?
Yeah, when people ask me, they're like, what does it mean when you say you're interfaith? What does that mean? And I said, to me, it means basically what you just said. It's like you can believe whatever you want to believe. If you're kind, rock on. That's fantastic. I worked with kids in residential psychiatric treatment in Alaska when I lived in Anchorage, and I used to do their spiritual assessments when they would come into treatment, and I would have to ask them questions about, what do you think about God? What do you think about death? Where do you think you go when you die? And all these different questions. And there was this one young man who came in and he goes, well, I'm a Satanist. And I said, awesome. I have never met a Satanist before. Can you tell me about it? There was this long silence. And I thought you were going to be mad. And I'm like, why would I be mad? I, I don't know anything. I want you to teach me. And he goes, I'm not really a Satanist.
Thought he'd come up with, Satan was an angel that was cast down, yada,
Something.
yada.
I
But
was
no,
like, tell me something. No, he was just trying to mess with my head. And he didn't, because I was like, cool,
yeah, I think people need is like you said, if as long as they're kind,
Yeah.
that's all that matters. And we need some base. I think a base helps people.
Yeah.
Religion is so volatile right now in our country, as many other issues are, that we need a base though. I think a base helps our kids, right? I
Oh,
mean, I
absolutely.
love the fact that I was able to look at all these different things when I was in college. I studied religion. So I really have my own path.
Hmm.
I don't really follow one necessarily over the other. I appreciate everybody and whatever messages they have to give. So,
And I think at different times in our lives, we have a different relationship. When I was
mhm,
little, God was a man in the sky, and that
mhm,
was okay. That worked for a while. And then at some point that like didn't work for me anymore. And so it was like, well, let me figure out. And I love that you mentioned unity because So I became a spiritual counselor through Science of Mind, which is
Oh, I love the Science of Mind. Oh, I buy
yes.
that every month.
Oh, see, oh, so you know about it, so I don't have to
Yeah.
say it's not Scientology, but
No,
no,
it's not. But our people listening might not know that. So,
true. Yes, it's yeah, it's also now known the Centers for Spiritual Living, and it's this wonderful integrated uh path that's based in love and law, and it's, you know, what God is love, and how God shows up is law, and God is not a man in the sky. God is this creative essence. And as soon as I figured that, I was like, oh, I love that. So it's in me, it's in you, it's in everything, it's all over, it's constantly recreating itself. I can groove to that, you know. And so in each part of our lives, we, you know, however we find that grounding, that thing that holds us, that anchors us.
well, I think if we open up and listen, we'll
Mhm.
know what our path is at that moment and what we need in that moment of time.
Yes.
So that's probably why you became a reverend when you did, right? It was what you needed to do in that moment in time. So how did that help you get through your challenge? You mentioned depression in the beginning, and I don't think it just went away, right?
No, it's still, I call it the worst roommate ever. I still live with it. It is the worst roommate ever. Never does the dishes, hates doing laundry, you know, wants to lay on the couch all day. I'm like, oh, come on. Um, yeah, so I started learning how to live with it and rephrasing how I spoke about it. So at some point, I stopped saying things like I have depression or I suffer from depression. Those two things are out of my vocabulary. I live with it because every day that I stay alive, I'm living with it. And and it's in the book. There's a moment when I turned 30 that I made a big decision to stay alive. And I made a contract with my dad and God. And at that point, God was looked like Sam Elliott in a suit.
Ooh,
I'm
okay.
Morgan Friedman because God is Morgan
I
Friedman.
know I love Morgan Freeman, but yeah, this was pre Morgan Freeman. So I was 30, and yeah, and I had this summit with God and my dad, and they both were like, "Well, it's, you know, you're 30. Are you going to stay or go?" Because that was my deal that I had made with myself when I was 13, was that I could leave when I was 30.
Hmm.
And I made the decision to stay. And at that moment, I said, you know, to the universe, to God, whatever, I said, I'm staying. Show me the path. And from that moment on, it was like lights came on right in front of me. You know, every step I took led me everywhere I needed to go. And I just made the commitment to say yes and keep saying yes. And so it took me into a theater company, and it took me up to Alaska, and you know, it took me to seminary. And yeah, I just kept saying yes. And the day that I graduated from seminary, I had this beautiful vision of an organizational chart, you know, like a corporate org chart.
Mhm.
But instead of minister being on top, the minister was on the bottom. And the message was, if you are going to become a reverend, you need to walk in reverence to everyone. And that put me at the bottom of the org chart so that I could keep lifting and helping people and encouraging people upward. And that was like, well, now I got work to do. Now I'm here and I've got work to do.
I love that though. I think that's amazing. It's interesting because recently I didn't realize, well, I did realize that you were a reverend, but I just looked at something the other day that I thought maybe this is the path I'm supposed to go. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe that is the path I'm supposed to go. Maybe this discussion today is part of, pushing me in that direction. I'm not sure. We're going to see. We're going to ask.
Yes,
You,
just keep asking.
you know, Rachel, as I hear you talk about this, and I've been open on Facebook, and my son knows it, so he knows that I also talk about it in some of the podcasts. Um, he's been going through a huge struggle, and he has most of his life. And what I want people to understand is that we all take this journey a little differently.
Yes.
And some of us are more open to hearing what others are saying and seeing what is happening around us and not holding it on ourselves and blaming ourselves. But there are a group of people who are going through depression, and they may have that secure group around them, but they just don't see it.
Yeah.
And, I think we all need to be a little more open and kind and not ask the question, so why are you depressed?
Right.
And I still get that question asked. And I got it asked by a doctor the other day.
Well,
And I picked up and I walked out of the office because it was like, you know, I think I know, but I really don't know. And like you said, you hung things on the hook of your dad dying. I was going to hang it on my son's hook. And it was like, no, okay. I'm seeing it more because of his hook there, but that's not what's causing it.
yeah.
And giving somebody the answer why you're depressed, I have to work through it, just like you've talked about. So I appreciate you and I appreciate your book because you're making a voice out there that many of us have never heard.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that this this word, the stigma, the negative connotation, people say, what do you have to be depressed about? I mean, I remember, oh, the big one, well, people in Syria have it much harder than you. That's absolutely true. And when you tell me about them, I get more depressed because then I feel bad for the people in Syria as well, on top of the depression that I'm experiencing. And there is no judgment, there is no qualifying. So when somebody says, why are you depressed, I want to ask back, why are you not? Like, tell me how you're not. Or would you say to somebody with diabetes, man, why do you have diabetes? Why do you have cancer? Why'd you do that? And it's like, you would never ask somebody that.
Right.
I think that it's a generational thing as well. I know we've talked about generational things a lot here. I have a 21-year-old and one that will be 24. My 21-year-old, I'm sure he's not going to be overjoyed that I put this out there, but he has depression that he's going through. And he's been talking about it to me for a while. And I
Good.
think he had it before. He had a lot of health issues, even as a baby and through growing up, and that didn't help. And then mom got cancer his freshman year in high school, and he was able to put that there, talking about hanging it on something,
Good. Yeah.
you know. And then he was just the most difficult kid from that point forward for about 5 years. And he's now getting a handle on it. But the last couple of years, he's been telling me, I need to talk to somebody. Now, I didn't have the most wonderful childhood, and he had so much more than I did. So when you mention the idea that, well, there's kids in Syria that don't have this, I know that came out of my mouth. I mean, not that, but it came out of my mouth, which was, listen, I had an alcoholic father who was abusive.
Right.
I'm here. I survived. I don't see myself as depressed. And I didn't as a child. I had coping mechanisms, and maybe it's me. Maybe that's just something that was inherent in me. But I used those. So it was hard for me to understand where he was coming from. So for parents out there who are in that position, like you, Karen, have been too, it's not that we don't want to understand. It's that it's hard if you've never been in that position. And it isn't that I don't get upset. I mean, I've had cancer. Listen, there were days where I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah.
I don't deserve this. And I went through a lot at the same time, a divorce and lost my home and all sorts of things happened. But somehow I pushed through that. Where my son didn't have the same ability to do that. It was hard for me. I guess that's just the point I want to make here, that as the parent, sometimes you don't get it. You want to, it's your baby, it's your kid, but it's really hard to understand. And it's okay if you don't. It's just you need to listen. And
One
that's
of,
what I had to do.
yeah, one of the women who edited the book, I've known her for many, many years, and she's a lovely, lovely person and a good friend. And she's never experienced depression. And so she was reading the book and she's like, I didn't, I didn't know. Like I didn't know about this.
Hmm.
And and it helped her not pay closer, but it helped her become more aware of her own kids and where they were at. And of course, to be able to like see, okay, that's what it looks like, and to be able to like, and of course it looks different on everybody. It was just
Right.
some of the things in the book are I tried to make them a little bit more universal so that anybody picking up the book could go, oh yeah, I felt that, or oh, I know somebody who's felt that. And so yeah, so she went into it reading this book going, oh my God, and everyone's going to have their own experience. And yeah, I think it's about compassion, a lot of patience, a lot of patience. I've had people in my life who are going through just really deep periods of darkness, and I'll say things like, what can you be grateful for today? Because that's what saved me.
Hmm.
However, it didn't save me until I was ready for it to save me. And so I have to remember to be patient, which, sometimes I'm like, no, 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 come on, you can get through this. And I have to remember my experience is my experience, their experience is their experience. Let me show up for them,
Hmm.
try to be helpful, try to be supportive, and not weigh them down with my perceptions or my experience,
Oh,
because there was a long time I wasn't grateful.
oh no. And I think that as a parent or a friend or the spouse or whatever, you get angry. You don't understand. You're really trying to make sure that everybody's happy, and you've gotten all these things and we've done all these things, and why aren't you there? Like, why aren't you happy about it? And it's very frustrating.
Yeah,
And you get angry, and you don't mean to, you don't want to. It's just that's just a reaction that you have because you don't understand.
right.
Well, and there's another thing that when somebody is depressed, we as a society think that they have to always feel those things that they're depressed about, meaning they're probably crying, they're sitting by themselves, they're complaining, it's this dark cloud. But the reality of it is, even when you are depressed, you do have moments or longer of all of a sudden laughing,
Mhm.
having what looks to be a great time. And from the person on the outside looking in, if they don't understand it, it becomes one of, what are they doing? Oh, they're acting. They're really not depressed. See, look at, they're out there having a good time. And that's something that I had to explain to my husband about our son, because he'll be so down and down. And then all of a sudden, he'll come, find us in the house and he'll start laughing about something. But just as quickly, you know, feel
Yeah.
sad again. And my husband will say, but why can't he stay happy? And it's like, well, why can't you ever get really sad?
Well,
Right.
nobody's happy all the time, and no one's
Exactly.
sad all the time. I mean, we all have our moments. It's a question of, where does the meter go, one more direction or the other,
Right.
right? So, Rachel, when you hit those moments, what do you do now, or what do you talk to people about, and how do you get beyond that depressed moment?
For myself, so I describe it in the book as a hum. So actually, I use a lot of different description. I'm big on metaphor and description, and but if you've ever been in a office with with fluorescent lights on,
Mm-hmm.
and you're talking and everyone's talking, and if it gets quiet, you can hear the fluorescent lights hum, but you don't always hear it. It doesn't matter that you don't always hear it; they're always humming.
So,
That's what depression is like with me. The depression is always there; it's always humming. And some days the hum gets really loud, and some days it's softer. Sometimes during the day, like you were talking about, like I go swim in the mornings, and I love seeing the people that I swim with, my my morning lap swimmer people, and I'm happy to see them, and we chat and we have a great time. And then I finish swimming and I get in the car and I might burst into tears. Neither of those experiences is a lie. I was really in the moment of being joyful in the pool. And the hum got louder in the car and it just happened. And so I remind myself that, in the prayer, it's, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, not camp out, not build a house, not park my car. I walk through it. So I remind myself, nothing lasts, Rachel, nothing lasts. The excellent moments don't last, and the difficult moments don't last. Everything passes, and that's okay. It's okay. So what can we do right now? And some days it's curl up in a ball on my bed and cry. And some days it's shut everything down and take a nap. And some days it's take Maddie and let's go for a good long walk. Whatever, my toolbox is overflowing with tools. And it's because I'm 58 and I've been collecting tools for 58 years.
So that was going to be my question. What happens when you're 20 or 21 or 25, where you don't have the ability to just stop your day because maybe you haven't had the tools, or you can't do the tools because you have to work, or you have class, or you have something to go through. During that time, and I'm assuming, you've had this your whole life, so you've been in that situation. What did you do to get through that?
So in my early 20s, at 24 and 25, I was actually hospitalized in New York City in a psych unit. And this was pre-gratitude, because the people there, the wonderful, I should say the nursing staff, the wonderful nursing staff there, tried everything. Think of something you're grateful for, think about flowers, think about this. And there was no gratitude in my life at that point. And I got kind of dragged through that. And looking, like you said, from where I stand now, looking back, I can see that I was letting myself be a victim of life. Life was happening to me, at me. At that time, I probably would have said, I have depression. I suffer from depression. I'm a victim of depression. And so what I would want to do if I talked with somebody who was 20 or 24 is to start shifting that focus as early as possible to, can you think of one thing you're grateful for? And I mean, start with the basics. Did you sleep in a bed last night? Be grateful for that. Do you breathe on your own? Be grateful for that. Did you put your clothes on by yourself and use the bathroom by yourself? Did you eat something today? Start with the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy and don't build up until you're ready. Because the key is to be able to find, well, the goal is 3 things every day to be grateful for, but the key is start with 1. And many people don't have the luxury of curling up in a ball. So I don't think there's anything wrong with putting something on an emotional shelf. When I first learned how to meditate, the first technique I was taught was, when a thought comes up, put it on a shelf and say, I'll get back to you, and put these things on the shelf. And so, if you're working at Taco Bell and you're going through a really miserable depression and you're like, I can't do it. Okay, here's what you do. If you can, try your best, put the weight up on the shelf, do your job. Just show up at the bare minimum. Then when you get out of there, do something kind for yourself. Take care of yourself. Have a good cry, reach out to somebody. It doesn't have to be a therapist. It can be a friend. It can be clergy. It can be, somebody who knows you. It can be a cousin. It can be, sometimes it's my dog. And just sit down and say, I have to get this weight off, and get the weight off. We can still function while depressed. It's not always easy, and sometimes it's really hard. And when you can't, the good news is there are there are agencies and there are people who are ready to help.
Right. I think I did the shelf thing without even realizing it. I like that way you explained that, because going through, so I separated, found out I had cancer, had to have treatment, surgery, lost my house, had to move. One went off to college, one was still in high school. And I didn't have time for
No.
that. I had to survive, and I had a child to take care of, a teenage child. I had to move forward. So if something bothered me, that's what basically I think I did, is I put it on the shelf. Now, recently I had a Parkinson's diagnosis in the last couple of months. And the doctor said to me, well, you're taking this rather well. And I said, well, what do you want me to do? Like, I've been through cancer. I had to work. I was moving again. I've moved 3 times in 5 years. Um, so it was really like, what do you want me to do? And I think I put it on the shelf. Now, through my social media, when Karen and I met each other, I was doing videos, and I would talk about getting through those moments.
Awesome.
And it was okay to have a bad moment. Just don't sit down in it. Just what you said. Don't wallow in it. Have it, move on. So I had videos which were, this is my challenge. Here's what I'm doing. Here's how I'm going through it. And then a couple times I'd do one and say, I've had a really sucky day. And it's okay. It's okay to have a sucky day. Just don't stay there and move on. So without knowing it, I think I did that, though I still can't say I'm a depressed personality or a person. I just don't think I am. I mean, Karen, you could argue that. You know me pretty well. But I don't think I am. But I do think I have my moments, and that's how I deal with it. Exactly what you said.
It's also really important to clear the shelf every so often
Yeah.
because sometimes those shelves will break. If we just
I
keep,
was thinking about that.
I'll just put it
Yeah.
on the shelf,
Said
I'll
that.
just put it. So yeah, every so often you got to go, I need a minute and just take one thing down. Okay, I'm going to look at this.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a hard one, and then just sit with that and journal or paint or, you know, intentional
Sing.
collage, vision boarding, whatever.
I sing. That's my
Oh, great.
release.
That's
So
fantastic.
I pick a song that fits the moment, and I
Yeah,
go through it that way.
beautiful.
I've been doing that my whole life.
And, depression is different for each and every one of us. Okay. And I've shared this before. My mother, when I went through a really hard time 8, 9 years ago, um, we decided that we had to go visit my mom and tell her I was going through depression because I didn't want to talk to her on the phone. Um, and we went up to Detroit, and um, my brother, I think, was in town visiting too. And my mother just looked over and she said, okay, explain this to me. What do you have to be depressed about?
Right.
You have a husband. Oh, and one of my elementary school friends came over to my mother's house to visit with us. And she said, and you have this boyfriend. Okay. So I have a husband. She said this guy was my boyfriend. And you've got your son and your brother. And she's just going on and on. And I said, if I could explain it to you, I would, because I wanted to explain it. I wanted to explain it to myself because the things that were getting me down were the things that I didn't want to do. And I was now at that point, I didn't have to do them anymore. But it weighed heavy on me because part of it was guilt, you know? Um, so it looks different. So, Melinda, when you say, you don't think you're depressed, I don't think you're depressed, but you deal with a lot of shit all the time.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. Um, and
I have my little cloud.
yeah, you
Yellow cloud.
do. And some people walk around like that for most of their life.
Right.
But I think it's your personality of working so hard at, I'm going to make this journey good. I'm going to find a way to do it.
Yeah.
Well,
And
sometimes I feel God put the cloud there because that cloud puts me here. And whatever happens with the cloud, You know, did you ever hear the phrase, God doesn't give you more than you can handle?
Oh,
And
yeah.
my phrase is always, I wish he didn't trust me so much.
Yep.
Um, yeah, sometimes I feel that way, but it is what it is for me. And I feel like if, as I said in the beginning, if I can help one person with my things or speaking to somebody who, like yourself, Rachel, sharing those things, that's the greatest gift we can give out of this, is to help one person get through that day. That's kind of my, oh, did Maggie show up?
You say hi? She's walking slowly. She's checking the house.
Checking it out.
But yeah, it's being able to, here's this thing. Can you help me with this? Yeah.
And I sort of put things out there, but then, I talk to somebody like yourself who, helps me think about how I want to approach it, and hopefully a listener on how they want to approach it. So so back to that, when you said, oh no, I have this depression, okay, did it happen when you were 25 that you realized what it was? Or would you say you knew what it was before and you just hit that critical mass, that critical point when you were in New York, right? And then moved on with, well, obviously you were out after a little bit of time, and then you moved on with your life. So kind of, where did you realize I've hit this point and I need more help, and then I can move forward?
That's a great question. So I'm going to answer it sort of circuitously. I hope that's okay. But
That's okay.
when I was 12, my dad died suddenly, and it was traumatizing. And my family thought I should see a therapist. I should see a child psychologist. And she was very well known here in Cleveland, and she was well respected, and she was a lovely human being. However, on our first meeting, I said, I have one question for you. And she said, what? And I said, will talking to you bring my dad back? And she said, no. And I said, then there's really no point in us doing this. Even at 12, I knew that there was something so deep and so painful in me that it wasn't worth talking about. Nothing was going to make it go away. And so she convinced me to, come to a few appointments, and I lied a lot. I became the professional liar in therapy. And this went on for many years. And I don't think it was until, I think I was just sort of a walking Eeyore, like you talk about the cloud. I was just Eeyore. And I just thought my life was destined to be sad. It was just destined to be sad. And I ended up hospitalized because, well, first of all, I never should have moved to New York City. It was one of the silliest things I've ever done. I was having psychotic episodes. I was hearing voices. I was actively suicidal, and I moved to New York. Just not smart.
A lonely city with a lot of people.
With a lot of, exactly. And my sister lived really near me, and I went there to go to performing arts school, and I made friends and all this stuff. It didn't take long for the city to like bump up the depression. And what happened was my body started breaking down. So I developed an ulcer, my hair started falling out. Like, because I wasn't expressing the depression was coming out through my body. And I was seeing a psychiatrist who was very patient with me while I lied to her. And she knew I was lying. So she was just like, when you're ready to tell the truth, you just let me know. And and then while I was in the hospital, I had these wonderful nurses, who were trying to teach me about gratitude, and I wasn't hearing it. When I was released from the hospital, it's a great story, but it's a long story. I was kicked out of New York, and I moved to Hudson, New York, and I started working with this amazing chiropractor named Michael Schaefer. And he said, when you're ready to be healed, the healers will show up. And I said, well, what do you mean by healed? because at this point now the depression had become my companion.
Mhm.
And I was like, when you say healed, do you mean I'm going to lose my companion? And he was so compassionate. He said, no, 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 no. When you learn to live with it, still wasn't quite sure. But I started reading more and I started expanding more and I started sort of saying to the universe, bring the healers in. And it was when I moved to Alaska and I started attending the Science of Mind Center, the Spiritual Center for Spiritual Living, that I was able then to start balancing, okay, I don't have depression. It does not own me. It's not something I keep. It is part of my life and I'm going to live with it. And it was like I made a declaration. And from then on, I'm not saying things were easy because they have not been always easy. I feel like I'm holding a little lantern.
To help you down the path.
And I'm on this long path and there are people ahead of me with brighter lanterns and there are people behind me with no lanterns. And so I'm looking to the people ahead of me with the brighter lanterns while holding my lantern out going, follow
Come
me
with me.
this way, follow this light. And as I get closer, my light gets brighter. And that's my encouragement to anybody going through depression is stay alive. Just stay alive. There's a great AA saying that says, don't give up 10 minutes before the miracle. I shorten that time. Don't give up 3 minutes before the miracle. Just hang in there because none of these moments lasts forever. And I'm living proof of this.
A moment is a moment.
Exactly.
And people don't think about it that way, It's 1 minute, 1 second at a time. It's just that moment. And the next moment may be better. Did they do medication for you?
Oh, goodness gracious, yes. I started on medication in the early 80s, mid 80s. And this was pre-Prozac, so I was on like the really toxic stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I was on a bunch of those. When I was in the hospital, I went through 8 sessions of ECT, of shock treatment.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I left New York, I came back to Cleveland and I was on the first trials of Prozac and Zoloft, did Effexor, did Wellbutrin.
Do you think they help?
No,
I
not
don't
me.
think they do either.
I mean, not me. Let me say generically, some people are truly helped by them and God bless them. Someone just recently introduced me to the term treatment resistant depression. And I was like, oh my God, that is me. The problem for me was that I'm really sensitive to everything. Like if I take 2 Advil, I can't drive. So what was happening was the side effects were worse than the depression.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kept trying. I really did. I kept trying. And the side effects were so toxic that I finally said, you know what? Let me try it. Let me try riding without the training wheels. And this promise that I had made on my 30th birthday to God and my dad became the guiding light for me.
I was going to say, because of the fear of not having it, like, that's kind of the standard right now. I'm for looking at natural alternatives. That's just me. That's why I use music. I take a walk. I go to the ocean when I hit my, I need that. That replenishes me. That helps me. But medicine today is about giving you a pill. And we have a whole generation of pill takers. Like, okay, well, I'm going to take this pill and it's going to make it better. And I cannot tell you how many people I know in their 20s and 30s who are on medication.
Yeah.
People that I've known for years, and I look, really? You're on that medicine? Oh yeah, I need to have it. I don't understand that myself personally, but I would think that there's a way not to go with the medication, and that's what you chose to do.
Yeah, and I always put this disclaimer on it because if it's working for you, I have friends who are on like low grade
Mhm.
stuff and it maintains it and it keeps them safe and that's great. I applaud any way we take care of ourselves. Any way we take care of ourselves. I will say that when I decided to stop taking meds, I was seeing a naturopath up in Alaska and he had me take there were two supplements, L-tyrosine and 5-HTP. And those two supplements were part of the base creation of some of the SSRIs
Mhm.
without the side effects. And so I would take those for a while. And then I was like, all right, training wheels off. Let's see how we do, you know? And I take all kinds of, I'm the crazy supplement lady. I take
I do too.
supplements. Um, I think that whatever works, whatever works. And so I am very vocal about, you know, if you're taking a med and it's working for you, take it. That's awesome. If it changes, go with that. You know, go with the change. And at the pool where I swim, there's a lazy river. You know, those lazy rivers that
Yeah.
people walk in. And when anybody starts going the wrong way in the lazy river, I hear the lifeguards going, "You have to go with the current. You have to go with the current." And I heard this while I was swimming the other day, and I thought, that is so deep. Have to go with the current. And it's so, if something's working, great. If it stops working, go with the current. Find something different. Make a new choice. See what happens if you try without it. If it doesn't work, great. Go back to your doc and say, I need something else. We are definitely medicine dependent. I mean, I don't have a television anymore. I just know those commercials are still on there. And
Mhm.
when I hear that list of, you know, potential side effects, I'm like, oh my God, I can't take that. Because all
Right.
of those will happen to me. So yeah, I mean, I just, whatever keeps people going. Whatever. I actually told my doctor once, I said, can you just give me a placebo and tell me that it's going to help? Just give me a sugar pill, tell me it's going to help. Because my brain is good enough that it'll go, okay, I'll take that. So yeah, I mean, you know, I'm very supportive of whatever people need.
So if you had, because believe it or not, we've almost talked an hour. The time has just flown by. So I know we're going to have to maybe have you back and we
Yes,
can continue
absolutely.
more discussion. But if you had to leave a tidbit for somebody today, like somebody who's younger coming into this saying, okay, what do I do? I don't know where to turn. You know, there's medicine seems like an easy thing, right? Take a pill, fix the problem. But you and I both know that that's why I have Parkinson's, by the way. I took medication for chemotherapy for cancer and now I have Parkinson's. There's
Oh,
always a side to what we're doing, even if it helps us, right? So if you had a word of advice to throw out there for somebody that's on this journey, what would you say to start? How would you start the journey for them or help them move forward on their journey?
so it's going to sound trite, but here it comes. The first thing I would ask is, can you tell me something you're grateful for? Just find one thing and focus on that. Focus on that one thing. And then, like I said before, just know that I know when you're 20, you think that this is the only time that's ever going to be, and it's never going to change, and it's always going to be like this. And I can tell you that I was 20 and I totally believed that. And it was a lie. It was a lie. In 6 months, 8 months, 1 year, 2 years, everything is going to be different.
And that's true for somebody who doesn't have depression. You could
Right.
think you're in the best moment of your life, right? Everything's perfect. And 6 months from now, might not be so perfect.
As you know. Yeah, there's a great story about a king. It's a long story, but anyway, there's a king who sends people out, sends his wisest men out to the four corners of the world and says, bring me back the most important piece of wisdom. And they each bring something back, and it's not good, it's not good. And the fourth one says, this too shall pass. And he's like, that's the one. because our best moments pass and our toughest moments pass. Every moment passes. And the key to all of it is find something, anything to be grateful for.
Put that up on your board so you look at it every day. I actually have something on my board that says be grateful, and I see it every single day above my computer. Because there are so many times, believe me, in the last few weeks, I'm like, oh, what the hell is going on now? Right? One more thing. Oh, no, you didn't. Why would you do this to me? But I do remember what I'm grateful for every day. I really work hard on that and pay attention. And there's so many good pieces of my life, so many good friends that I have. And yes, I have health challenges, but they could be worse. So I really try to focus on the good things. And I think it does sound trite when we say that, but that's really the truth.
It is the truth.
That
Whenever
is our truth.
when I used to go to the grocery store back in the days, and they would say, hey, how you doing today? And my response was always, I put my pants on by myself, so it's a good day. Start with a low bar.
Mine is peachy, by the way.
I like peachy.
How are you today? Oh, I'm just peachy. And depending on how the inflection is, might tell you how my day really went, but it's always peachy.
I used to do darn fine a lot, and then people stopped believing me. So I like peachy though.
Well,
It's my thing.
before we end this, I just want to say that one of the things I have found that helps me is doing something nice for another person.
Yes.
And today I just did that. This weekend was a really tough weekend for me. And a florist who I know up in Saratoga Springs, New York, had posted she had these beautiful little bouquets. And I contacted her and I said, can you get one to my sister in law? And she said, absolutely. And it turned my world around today because, and I wasn't waiting for a thank you or anything. I was doing something that I wanted to do. And I do that a lot. And it doesn't necessarily have to cost you anything. It can be just sending that text message saying to somebody,
Yeah.
I'm thinking of you. Or, starting to read somebody's book and let them know, hey, I'm really reading it. It's not just collecting dust on my shelf. So we all do it differently. But the big thing is we can't wait for people to come to us.
Karen, you're 100% correct. I belong to this Cleveland East Senior Network group. And during the pandemic, when it started, we all had to try to figure out, we work in the senior care industry. How do we get out there? How do we talk to people? How do we do those things? So we started this networking with a heart. And one of the things we've been doing since April of 2020, all the way through still doing it, is we dance every week. And we go to assisted livings, nursing homes, rehabs, and we line dance and we do YMCA and we do happy. And I cannot tell you, if I'm having a bad day, my knee hurts a lot. And I'm like, oh God, I can't do YMCA one more time. I just can't. But when you get there and you see their faces and they're so excited to have us there and they're clapping and they're tapping their foot. Oh my God. When in the beginning, when we couldn't be together and we all had masks on and the staff would come outside with their mask on, some of them, and dance with us. And it was great for them too. But the seniors and the people who are in there, the feeling that you get, the joy that you get, what you've put out there makes that time, and it's 30 minutes, worth every bit of it. So I think that, Karen, you're 100% correct. If you give something back, I do it every single week. I've only missed a few for, whatever reason, but it's so worth it. And it makes you realize, there but the grace of God go I, was my grandmother's favorite little phrase.
Yeah.
And that could be me one day. And that moment will mean something to me.
Absolutely.
So, Rachel, Give me one thing that you throw out there. We can end with that you do regularly.
Oh gosh. So I have something called the morning text ministry,
Mhm.
and it started with one friend, and then it grew to like 2 or 3, and now I'm up to 22. Every morning I text 22 people a morning message. Good morning. Let me know you woke up, some picture, an inspirational thought. And then the parameters are I have to hear from you all by 11 or I start stalking. And so every morning I send out the 22 texts and I get them back. It's just to make sure everybody knows that somebody's thinking about them and making sure they woke up and they're not alone.
And anybody can do that that's watching
Absolutely.
today. They can pick their 10 best friends or 12 friends and do that every day. Or maybe somebody who isn't so much of a friend, you might want to surprise them.
Yep, exactly.
What a
You know, it
great
means
idea.
something. Well, would you be willing to come back and we can have further discussion?
Absolutely. I would love to talk more about stuff.
Awesome. So for whoever's been watching this today, if you want to hear more, subscribe to New Cleveland Radio, and you'll be able to hear more of this podcast and so many others that Karen puts out there that are really important. So
Yes.
thank you so much. I appreciate your being here today.
Thank
It's been a
you.
blessing.
Thank you. Nice to meet you. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you. And give Maddie a big hug for
I
us.
didn't get to see Maddie, your puppy, but
No, I'm gonna be
maybe
counseling
the
now.
next time.
Maybe
Next
the
time.
next time.
Next time.
Have a great day, everybody. Take
Bye.
care.